Hello once again. Um, this next story it's not religious in a sense. Um, I'm not a born again Christian or anything like that. I do have faith. But one thing that's always intrigued me is the events regarding the crucifixion of Christ. And I think the story is one of the most powerful stories ever written. And I do believe it happened. And I thought I'd write a story on that. It's a story from the view of a Roman soldier and a dog. And this is just my take on that event. For the record, I don't subscribe to any church. I think this whole evangelical thing is dangerous and stupid. But I do have a faith, so to speak. And I think the implications of that whole event are just worldwide. And anyway, this is the story of that event, told in fiction form, from the eyes of a Roman soldier, and incorporating a dog as well. So, enjoy.
A Soldier's Journal to Jerusalem, BC/AD. It has been raining steadily now all day ever since those strange unsettling events that have both unsettled and gladdened me. It's about a dog, or to be more precise, a dog and a man. A strange man who got what he deserved, or did he? A sudden clap of thunder startles me. Almost a supernatural roar from an outraged deity that blasts across the sky and echoes now across the deserted streets of this one city called Jerusalem. Anyway, I digress. My name is Claudius, a centurion of Caesar's infantry, and one of the best swordsmen in his regiment. A sword that now glints very dully in the corner next to my shield and discarded armour. And I'm writing this account because I need to. I will honestly say that I am a hard bastard, well trained, tempered by combat, skilled in the sword and happy to use it. I have only been here in the Middle East for a week, and already I have fostered a love for its people and its very agreeable climate. My previous posting was in some godforsaken outpost called Hadrian's Wall. Yep, that inhospitable freezing outpost in a freezing inhospitable country with people that absolutely hate us and trying their best to kill us. Painted savages throwing themselves at the wall, freezing snow and biting wind. Now we are used to warm weather, and this was a foretaste of hell. But back then, how I enjoyed our attacking patrols deep into enemy wastelands. My sword plunging into soft flesh, the carnage and the hate. The awesome techniques of the Roman army being used against these savages, and their blood running like rivers into the gurgling streams. Yes, that was good, but most of the time, it was just freezing boredom. Our hands numb with cold, freezing, dark by midday in winter, and scarcely tolerable in summer. No, It was with great glee that I accepted this posting to the Middle East, and I revelled in the warmth of its climate. However, over here everything was just fine, just a bit of crowd control, some numerous executions, which are always found distasteful. But you have to realise, Rome has to be seen as a powerful, world-changing force that it is. And anybody who challenges it, whether by sword or pen, word or writing, alone or army, will pay horribly, and most importantly, to be seen to be paying. So no doubt remains. The message is simply this: you mess with us and you die. That is the law. The Picts in Scotland, the Goths in Germaninus, and others have learnt this the hard way. So over here in this warm desert, it was reasonably easy to subdue and discipline these bearded folk with their camels and their temples. That was until this man arrived, a strange, ugly-looking man, who arrived with a small little band of followers, ragged men in ragged clothes, accompanied by an equally ragged little dog that followed them faithfully. This was the time of the Passover, so the city was and still is full. This individual, he arrived on a donkey and proceeded to make an absolute nuisance of himself, taking a whip to the moneylenders in the temple, which, to be fair, I quite admired, since I cannot stand them myself. Then preaching a strange doctrine that made the Jewish Sanhedrin priests cough in their goblets and wail through their beards. Anyway, I was called one night to go and arrest this annoying individual. So along with a whole regiment of troops, why we went to go and arrest one man with the regiment, I do not know, but those were the orders. So we crept down that night to this garden called Gethsemane. Why so many of us to arrest one is a mystery, but apparently there were rumours of supernatural activity surrounding this man. But I guess there was nothing that a good steel sword could not put a stop to. Apparently he cast demons out of that nut job down to the catacombs, raised a stinking corpse from the dead, and healed the daughter of the regiment's commander. Maybe a show of force wasn't such a bad idea after all. Apparently he was betrayed by some slime bag for some silver. Anyway, on entering the garden, this little dog came up to us wagging its tail, obviously pleased to see us. This strange man was summoned forth, and the aforementioned slime bag kissed him on the lips. A scuffle ensued, and with a sudden flash of steel, a soldier cried out, holding his head, and I saw a severed ear on the ground, and immediately drew my sword, as he messed with one of us, and the result is severe. Suddenly a voice cut through the scuffle, a voice that made us all freeze immediately, and all anger vanish like a suddenly emptied cup. This man picked up this severed ear, and to my shock and dawning horror, he placed it back on the soldier's head. It stayed there like it had never been cut off. The little dog barked as his brave disciples ran off and disappeared. Then, accompanied by his little dog, this man gave himself up to us. We handed him over to the authorities, and after we disbanded, I joined the crowd outside. Firelight as a backdrop to hushed voices. Incense filled the air as whispers of his fate filled. Suddenly a cock crowed, and a man espied a member of his band suddenly turned pale, and run away. Now, whatever was going on behind the walls of the court was of no further concern to me. So, feeling tired, I made my way back to my tiny room in the barracks, got undressed, and fell into a deep, restless sleep. Dreams. So many weird dreams. I've never had dreams like I had that night. Strange shapes on wheels. Men who looked like insects flying in the sky. Strange birds that made a noise like the roar of thunder. I saw men with long poles that brought the thunder down from the sky and killed at long distances. I saw huge clouds shaped like mushrooms with deafening roars. I saw water flowing uphill. I saw crowds running and screaming, the sky splitting. Mass panic ensued with people in strange-looking clothes. And they looked strange to me because they had clothing and mannerisms and things that we did not understand. Then suddenly the sky splitting, and the same man we arrested coming down with millions of screaming angels. Noise, fear, apocalypse.
Bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yo nah prachodaya.
I awoke, scared and sweating, with the sound of scratching at the door. On opening, I was surprised to see it was a little dog. He looked at me and whined, ran past me and lay down at the foot of the bed. Too unsettled to care, I stumbled back to try and sleep again, and for the first time in my life, felt scared of my soul, my spirit, my existence. As if knowing the little dog jumped up and settled up next to me. I slept again, but this time the dream room was empty. A pounding on the door woke me up. With a start, the little dog jumped off the bed and ran to the door. Cursing, I got up and flung off the bedsheets, then padded to the door and flung it open. It was Claudius, the grinning satanic little shit that everyone hated. If sadism had a face and form, he was its ambassador. His cruelty was legendary, as was his passion for reveling in it. Wake up, he barked. Today was a full day, his kind of day. Yep, that weirdo who was arrested is going to have a nightmare of the first order kind of day. That was going to be both mercifully short yet painfully long. With a grin that would curdle milk, he explained the day's festivities. First, a flogging, administered by himself. I cringed inside. A flogging from this man who loved his work would almost certainly be an execution in itself. Wielding the cat of nine tails whip with its sharp bone shards designed to shred the skin, this artist would inflict tremendous pain and mutilation on his hapless victim. It was what he said next that appalled me. After these festivities, it was crucifixion. Crucifixion? I was appalled. This man had done nothing, really. He was no assassin, no murderer, not guilty of treason as such. No, he was just a vagabond with a big mouth and strange gifts. Yet he was given the most torturous death penalty devised. Okay, before I go much further, I need to tell you a few facts regarding this execution method. The man is spread eagled on a cross, tied down and lying down on it. Huge nails are then smashed through his wrists, sending shock, pain, and nerve impulses through the body. Then the feet are placed one on top of another. A block is placed underneath to support them. Then a huge nail is smashed through both feet about 2 inches down from the toes and into the wood. The cross is then hoisted upright and dropped into a hole in the ground. The victim then hangs like a bleeding flag, exposed to the merciless heat and pain, and the suffering begins. To breathe, they have to pick up their body weight up on their nails, take an agonized breath, and settle back down on their impaled feet and arms, making the wounds hurt even more. This can go on for hours. Eventually, they were unable to pick themselves up on their nails anymore, and they start to suffocate. Then, as a laughable act of mercy, one of the soldiers advances with a heavy club and smashes the bones of the legs, ensuring that the victim is unable to pick up his torso on his legs and thus suffocates. This is the fate of the man today. Shaking my head, I got dressed and suddenly noticed the little dog was gone. We all met down in the courtyard with his whipping post in the middle. Claudius was already lining up the whips and canes to be used with an excitement that I guess only the true sadist would ever feel. The gate suddenly opened, and in walked the subject of his soon-to-be not-so-tender administrations. I stared aghast. This man was as close to death as anyone could be. He had been totally beaten up, and with swollen eyes was led to the post and tied down. The whipping began. Blood sprayed, and the whip pierced his flesh. Then the bamboo cane followed, splitting open his back like wet leather. Claudius was in his element, grinning satanically, as he beat and hit and shouted and hit and beat and yelled. Yet this man did not utter a sound, just sinking slowly down to the ground as his blood flowed like a river. On it went, on and on. How much could a man take? And there was still the worst to come. I was about to shout for it to stop when a yell from the sergeant brought this carnage to a halt. Picking up the inert form, they dragged it over, and they wrapped it in a robe that was immediately sauntered with blood. And I was disgusted with some joker sauntered forward and pressed down on the wicked acacia thorns that were pressed onto his head, loosely resembling a crown. He was then led out of the courtyard. I noticed a thick beam of wood on the floor and realized that was his cross. Some of the soldiers picked it up and jammed it onto his shoulders and started walking to the crowds that were now waking on the streets. It was then I noticed the dog. He was at his heels, walking with him, whining, and clearly distressed at the pain his master was going through. I followed closely. The noise of the crowd was a torrent of abuse and hate as this man with his little dog staggered through the streets, heading to the awful hill of execution called Golgotha. The crowd surged and I pushed them back, keeping my eye on the back of the bedraggled figure lurching in front of me. The dog was at his heels when suddenly he fell over. Immediately a young black man rushed forward and helped him pick up his load. Indeed, actually took some of the beam onto his own shoulders, and together they staggered along. I shuddered to think what that heavy piece of wood was doing to the man's already torn back, but his death was coming soon, and would be a welcome release from the torment. Eventually, after a hellish journey of narrow streets, screaming faces, and what must have been excruciating pain for the beaten man, we reached the outskirts of the city and climbed the gently sloping hill of Golgotha. I was surprised to see 2 men who were also to die that day already there and writhing in agony on their cross. We arrived, and I saw the man's family there, visibly distressed and crying. The little dog ran up to the man as he was thrown down to the ground, but was kicked away by one of the soldiers. The dog then ran up to me and took up station by my shield, which I lowered to the ground. It was now the torture really started. Actually producing with relish the long 9-inch nails, the head executioner approached the figure on the ground that was now tied to the cross, and without hesitation smashed one nail through the wrist of the man using a heavy mallet. The shock wave travelled up the man's arm and made his body convulse. The same was done to the other wrist with the same effect. Then the feet were put onto a block set into the cross, laid one on top of the other, and a nail was smashed through both of them. The body convulsed like a fish out of water. I could dimly make out the similar fate of the other men as I saw the cross with them on it, its grim cargo lying there, up there like wet flags, and with a thud that must have added to the pain of the man nailed at it, was dropped into a hole in the ground. There he hung, suspended in the sky, alive, unfortunately conscious, and aware of what was happening to him. Blood flowed down in rivulets as agonizingly he forced himself up onto his nails to breathe, and then down onto them to exhale. This could go on for hours. One of the other men says something to him, and lifting his battered face, he says something back. "Today, you will be with me in paradise." Immediately the other man's face lit up with a kind of cosmic wonderment and universal relief, happiness and supernatural joy. I was amazed at this and stepped forward to hear more, but was greeted only by silence. I heard a little whimper next to me and looked down and saw the little dog gazing up at the man above me. I had been to many executions, but this was different. There was an atmosphere, almost like the heavens holding its breath. The universe was about to change, and our spiritual instincts could feel it as keenly as a migratory bird feels its homeland. The sky darkened and raindrops started to fall. Clearly, a major storm was on the way. Hours passed, and at last the executioner grabbed a huge club used to smash the leg bones of the condemned so they could start to suffocate, and the pain would go. With a splintering crack, he broke the shins of the first two men, and was just about to turn around when our man shouted a loud cry and died. Rushing forward, a soldier thrust his spear into the chest of the now dead man and was inundated with blood and water. What happened next will live with me for eternity. A blast of thunder tore the sky apart. The earth heaved as an earthquake rippled through the ground. We all yelled and ran for cover as the heavens wrought out its displeasure at the human abomination we had just inflicted on this lonely, helpless man. I saw the dog running away, and I ran too, terrified for no real reason except that what we had done was cosmic in its implications. People were terrified in the streets as long-dead corpses suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Priests came running out of the main temple, frightened and scared. The main curtain inside had been torn asunder, and a roar that was not human had filled the temple. God himself was roaring in pain and anger. Clutching their ears, the priests fled. I also grabbed the dog and ran for shelter, passing these strange ghosts that suddenly appeared in the streets, skeletons in robes. Scared out of my mind, streaming off me, rain and thunder sounding like mountains crashing together. Weeping, I found shelter just inside the city walls and held the dog tight. And then suddenly it was over. The silence was deafening. And the sun once more warmed the wet earth. I crept out of my shelter, and there he was. He was surrounded by a few family and friends. I saw him being slowly lowered, and the corpse claimed by his loved ones and was then borne away. I turned around just in time to see the little dog running up that hill in procession and out of sight. I never saw that dog again. Anyway, as I write this, the rain is drizzling gently outside, gently tapping on my roof and walls. It is dark outside now, and my candle is splitting the darkness as I write. And the city, though not sleeping as comfortably as before, sleeps nonetheless. I'm quite frankly scared and confused. I'm a brave man, but what happened today was not of this earth, and I feel I have brushed the face of another world. Spirity things have changed. How? I do not know. But this world has changed. We all feel it, but have no idea why. That man we killed today was not of this world, that I know now, and the implications of that scare me along with those strange, weird dreams. Maybe one day this will come more clear, but right now, the sense of shock and doom around the city is just too palpable to understand. Anyway, I am tired and confused and scared, so I'm going to complete this journal and try and get some sleep. Maybe one day in the future, someone will find this and get an insight into this dark and terrible day. As for that little dog, I guess I just don't know. So Jerusalem, Soldiers' Quarters, Marcus Aurelius, signing off.